Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexanderson, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. What is it that makes a state park special? It's a question I've asked myself countless times since I began exploring Pennsylvania's public lands in 2021. For some, it's deep, meaningful history to indigenous cultures, to early settlers, or even to industry. For others, it's beautiful features like waterfalls, old-growth forests, and scenic vistas. And for some, it's the landscapes that allow them to hike, bike, paddle, birdwatch, hunt, fish, and more. For me, I found the parks I deem special share a lot of these components. I want some history. I want something beautiful to look at. And I want a park that provides me with the opportunity to explore and discover. One of those places for me is Salt Springs State Park. Located less than 10 miles from the New York border, Salt Springs State Park is special. Now, I can't guarantee you will find it special, but I think it's pretty damn cool. Here's a quick list of some of the things I think are special that we'll delve into further this episode. It's got an old-growth forest, 3 waterfalls, meadows, historic buildings, pre-colonial and early American history, fascinating geology, hiking trails, camping, and so much more. But best of all, it's in the middle of nowhere. So your hikes won't be disturbed by road noise, and it's likely you won't find a crowded park. Wouldn't that be nice for a change? Salt Springs State Park is special, and it should be near the top of your list if it's not already. Yes, it's a bit of a drive depending on where you live, but the best places are always worth the extra time it takes to get there. But before we learn more about the park, here's the stats. Salt Springs State Park is a 405-acre park located in Susquehanna County. However, the Friends of Salt Springs State Park own an additional 437 acres adjacent to the park's southern border that is also open for public access. Available activities include hiking, picnicking, wildlife watching, hunting, fishing, overnight accommodations, and sightseeing. A notable feature of the park is its 3 waterfalls. Salt Springs State Park was named after the salt spring that can be found on the property. Nearby towns include Montrose, Friendsville, and New Milford. State lands that are close by include State Game Lands 175 and 35 and Susquehannock State Forest. You may enjoy the park if you enjoy old-growth forests and waterfalls. I'm excited to welcome Lee Dillon to the podcast. Lee is the manager of the Lackawanna State Park Complex, which includes Salt Springs State Park. Lee, thanks so much for joining the program.
Hey, I'm more than happy to be here.
How would you describe the park to someone who's never been there before?
Salt Springs is kind of a hidden treasure. It's tucked up in the northern end of Susquehanna County. It's a fairly small park. It's about 405 acres, although there is a very strong friends group involved up there. They have another 437 acres that's directly adjacent to it. Most of it is dominated by woods, but it does contain the the Fallbrook natural area, which is an old growth hemlock zone up on the upper end of the park above the falls, and that's just a beautiful area.
The park is named for the salt spring that has historically been active on the property. What can you tell us about the spring and its importance to the area's indigenous people and early settlers?
Well, the first people that interacted with the salt spring were, of course, the indigenous American Indians. They traveled through the area during hunting expeditions and things like that. They attempted, honestly, to keep the location of the spring secret for a very long time because they didn't want settlers coming in. But eventually, as with everything, they found it and were able to figure out that there was some money to be made there. Numerous attempts were made through different entrepreneurs over the years to capitalize on that. It was never a big enough venture to really catch on wholesale, but there was a point in time between 1795 and 1870 where there was some salt production coming out of that spring.
Was it ever an amount that made that big of a difference? Like, could it change like one person's life, or could it help sustain a community?
There are stories and lore that goes around up there. I don't know that there's any real specific evidence that any one family was able to capitalize and prosper from it, but I know that there were numerous attempts made.
The Fallbrook natural area encompasses the gorge and the old-growth eastern hemlock forest. This area gives visitors the opportunity to experience what Pennsylvania forests were like 300 years ago. What kind of forest can visitors expect to see on a visit?
In the old-growth areas at Salt Springs, you're going to be in some pretty significant hemlocks. I've worked at a couple of spots across the state. Everybody thinks of Cook Forest and the Cathedral when they think old-growth hemlock. This one rivals it. I don't know that they're as big, but they're big. They're definitely worth coming up and being a part of. And if you've never experienced the feel of that old growth being in it, it's one of those almost surreal experiences because you're looking at stuff that is literally generations old, many, many generations old. And there's something tranquil and peaceful and just pretty amazing about interacting with a forest of that nature.
And despite the fact that it might be a small park, I mean, I do think it's a lot to see, and one of those places that it's not a long hike to be able to get to these really beautiful, wonderful areas.
No, I absolutely agree. It's got a pretty extensive hiking system. Um, there's varying difficulties to get to the old growth. Actually, there's a parking lot up on top of the hill, going back towards the boardwalk trail that literally runs, and that trail runs right into it. It's an old logging road. It's almost completely level. It's easy to traverse. When you get back far enough, you get onto a boardwalk system to go through it. Literally, if I'm talking to people about accessible areas, thinking people with mobility challenges, that's an area I could send them to because it's that acceptable accessible. The other area, the waterfalls, those are a little bit harder to get to.
Yeah. Well, speaking of waterfalls, there's three picturesque waterfalls cascade over the waters of Falls Brook in the park. What's the best way visitors can see these scenic waterfalls?
The best way is to go through to use the gorge trail. It starts at the bottom of the park down by the visitor center that the Friends group runs, and it runs all the way up to the top. You can go either direction. You can start at the top and go down, start at the bottom and come up. I'm an older gentleman, and I tend to, if I'm going to do it, try and have a vehicle on both ends because especially if you're going up, it can be a pretty significant uh, climb to get up out of there. But it's so worth it. The waterfalls are beautiful, especially when they're running good in the spring. It's definitely worth the hike.
Is that the best time to see them? Spring?
Typically, they don't ever completely stop, but when the rains are here in the springs, that's when they're going to be at their peak. You get into June and July, outside of major storms, they slow down a little bit just because of as the summer dries out and we get into those later months of summer, everything tends to dry up a little bit. But they're always there.
The rocky gorge cut by Fall Brook support flora that thrive in cool, moist conditions like mosses and ferns. What are some of the natural features visitors can see when they visit?
Um, there are a lot of them. You've kind of got to go out there. There's about a 34-acre natural area along down through that corridor. Um, you're going to see different things along those three waterfalls. Obviously, we've talked about the old growth, the different ecosystems. Um, Painted trillium is in there, which is quite stunning when it's in. Walking fern, small ferns, all those things are there in varying areas and varying patches as you move through. So it's just kind of you got to go in and see it and pick it out.
Yeah, and I think that's my favorite sort of environment. Like, I just love a rich, dark soil with the mosses and the ferns and the lichens. Like, that's the sort of trail I want to take.
Absolutely. I mean, it keeps your eyes busy, keeps your ears busy, because of course, when it's that healthy, you've got wildlife galore. So you're hearing pattering and chirping and all the stuff that you hear when you're out there. So yeah, it's a beautiful hike.
The park features several historic structures on the property that visitors can explore. Can you tell us about the Wheaton House, carriage barn, and barn?
Well, absolutely. The Wheaton House was a family home beginning in about 1840, and it was occupied in some way, shape, or form by the family up until the early 1970s. So they were there for a very long time. 1973 is when it got incorporated as a state park, so that's obviously when we took over the property. Um, the varying family members moved through that house through the course of its history. Um, it is still used today. The Friends Group uses it as an office. There's a teaching center in there. There's a small museum in it. Most weekends, it's staffed by volunteers from the Friends Group. You can go in and look around the lower floor at least. It really is a beautiful nod to the history of the area. The barn does not look as much like The barn, whenever it was built, it has been refurbished and remodeled numerous times, but the carriage house is still there. It's connected directly to the Wheaton house. It's right off the corner of it. Depending on when you go, we're hopeful to see it get some refurbishment in the near future. But it's gonna go back to being original. It's not going to get replaced. It's going to get refurbished in a historically accurate manner. So we're excited to see what that comes out like.
The Friends of Salt Springs have played a crucial role in park conservation. Can you tell us about the work that they've done?
Absolutely, they have been in place for a long time. I don't exactly remember when they took over. It is a unique situation. It is the only friends group that is responsible for day-to-day operations within the park. DCNR still oversees all the operation and make sure there's checks and balances there, but they handle. There's camping, a small amount of camping available. They handle that. There's a pavilion. They handle that. They do all of that day-to-day operational stuff up there. And it's been a great working relationship. And they have, there's definitely a love for that park up there.
Does my memory serve me correctly when I think that there's also a garden right outside the house?
Yes, there is. At least there was last year. I know they try and do it every year. They try and do a historically accurate 1800s style garden right outside the house as well.
Yeah, so my wife and I went to Salt Springs. I think it was my second trip, her first trip, right before a wedding. And right after knee surgery for myself. And there were friends group volunteers there, and they were so helpful with just like we went through the house. They pointed out the different things they were growing in the garden and how it was time period accurate and things like that. It's so cool to see people like that step up and serve their communities in ways other than, serving on some board or to be really out in the field doing the work. It's just so phenomenal to see.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It takes a love for the resource and a dedication to the resource to go out there and deal. And it's a fairly busy park. I mean, it's small, but it definitely gets its foot traffic. Um, and they're there every weekend. And these are volunteers doing it because they love the park and because they love the area.
And now, let's hear from our sponsors. The Keystone Trails Association presents the 2025 Keystone Hiking and Outdoor Weekend, October 17th to the 19th in the Pennsylvania Wilds. The weekend includes group hikes, river tours, bike rides, forest bathing, and more. KTA welcomes visitors to discover Clarion County and the PA Wilds. To learn more, visit kta-hike.org. Are you looking for your next adventure? Unlock some of the best landscapes in Pennsylvania with incredibly detailed, highly curated waterproof trail maps from the folks at Purple Lizard. They create extraordinary maps of Pennsylvania state forests for people who love to explore the outdoors. Find them at your local outfitters, bike shops, and bookstores, or visit purplelizard.com, where your next adventure begins. Ready for more time outdoors? Check out Think Outside with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation, a new podcast from the foundation. You'll hear stories, tips, and ideas to make the most of Pennsylvania's parks and forests. Whether it's a quick hike or a weekend adventure, Think Outside with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation will inspire your next outing. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Looking for a way to add some local Pennsylvania flair to your space? Check out Sisters Sunflowers. They create unique stickers inspired by small local spaces that make your community shine. From quirky caves to hidden local gems, their stickers bring your favorite places to life. Perfect for your laptop, water bottle, or anywhere that needs a little hometown love. For both locals and visitors, there's stickers, magnets, prints, and more celebrating Pennsylvania's most iconic parks and forests. And for more avid explorers, there's even a hand-drawn poster to keep track of the Pennsylvania state parks and forests that you've been to. Use the code HELLBENDER15 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Support local, inspire adventure, and decorate with meaning. Only at Sisters Sunflowers. Shop now and celebrate the places that make your town special. All right, back to the show. What do you love most about the park?
I'm a bit of a nut for waterfalls. I really enjoy them. There's something that goes along with waterfalls. One of my favorite spots in the entire system. I started my career at Moraine and McConnell's Mill, and is at McConnell's Mill down by the gristmill where the dam is. If you're having one of those days, you can find an environment like that. You can go down and you can just kind of let that rush, that water, that sound, kind of recenter you, get your mind clear and get you refocused on what you have to do. It's a very pleasing experience for me and something that I tend to find wherever I'm at.
There's about 15 miles of hiking trails in the park. Do you have any trail recommendations for people?
Yes, understand your abilities is probably my very first one. Like I said, if you start talking about the Gorge Trail, there's about 600 feet of elevation gain in that park if you're starting at the bottom and going to the top. Some of those trails can be treacherous. Some of them can be pretty heavy duty. For those that don't think they can handle that, there are other options. We talked about the Boardwalk Trail a little bit ago. There are some other ones that go into the Friends Group's properties that are beautiful trails that you can do, and if you're a little less adventurous, and those are all good things. The second thing is to make sure you're going out prepared no matter what you're doing. You don't want to be trail hiking in flip flops. It's sad that we see it every year. Somebody ends up injured because they were out there in flip flops. You follow basic safety precautions, and make sure you have water and you know where you're going, and ultimately that somebody even knows where you're at. Because if you do get lost, you're in Susquehanna County, and if you've never been up there, it's a little sparse up there. And if you make a wrong turn, you could be in the middle of the woods for a while. So you want to make sure somebody knows where you're at.
Is there something everyone should experience when they visit?
Yes, I think going into the Wheaton House and seeing some of the history that's in there is absolutely worth the stop. Um, and I know we just keep going back to it, but if you can get back to the Hemlocks and experience that old growth and see those monster trees, and or the waterfalls, and the first set is fairly easy to get to even from the base. They're just beautiful sights to see. There's some great history, and some really enjoyable environments to be in.
Let's say a visitor has a full weekend to explore the park. What do you recommend they do to kind of get a little bit of everything?
I would say plan a day of hiking. Go if you're up for it. Do start at the bottom, go up. You know, do the Falls Trail or the Gorge Trail. Enjoy the falls. You can walk right down the road to grab the Boardwalk Trail and run back into the Hemlocks in the old growth area. You can follow that trail all the way back down to the base. Depending on what your weekend looks like, they do have, like you said, camping there, so you could set up a reservation and spend the night and enjoy an evening under the stars. If you're not a camper, they do have a couple of cottages, very basic cottages that you can rent as well. Um, and then the next morning, nothing beats breakfast over a campfire. Do another short hike, enjoy the quiet morning as the dew rises, and that's a pretty good weekend in my books.
You spoke about it a little bit. What kind of camping accommodations are available? And so how would they book it if is it through something different than what Reserve America usually is for you guys?
Yes, yeah. The Friends Group does all the reservations for their camping. They have basically primitive campsites, fire ring, place to set up, and then they have a couple of cottages that you can go in. They're completely unequipped. You got to bring all your own stuff, just like most places. To reserve them, all you got to do is you can go through the state's website. It will direct you ultimately to the Friends of Salt Springs.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also, if you just punch in Friends of Salt Springs State Park, it'll take you to their website. Either way, it'll get you where you need to go to make those reservations.
What sort of events are hosted at the park?
They do several throughout the year. The one they've done last year, they hosted a cornhole tournament. They hosted a car show. They hosted one other one, and I apologize, I can't think of what it was. I try and get up there whenever for those events when they have them, but you know,
Lee, are there any educational programs people could take part in if they visit?
There absolutely are. The Friends Group does have a environmental educator on staff that does programming out of there. The educator from Lackawanna does go up and do the occasional program as well. But if you're interested in programming up there, again, if you go to the Friends of Salt Springs website, they have a calendar and they list their events and things like that. Uh, and you could also find anytime our educators up there would be on it on our website.
We started off by you saying that this is kind of a hidden gem. What do you think makes this park a hidden gem? Like, do you think it's location? So maybe not a lot of people know to go up there. Do you think it's a lack of promotion, or what do you think that kind of it might keep an average state park goer from like seeing that as quickly as possible?
Part of it is definitely location. It's just because of where it's at. It's the only park in Susquehanna County. It is tucked way up in the northern tier of the county. It is one of the parks, and there are a few of them out there. If you've been to a bunch of them, you know that you can't necessarily hear highway noise. You know, and there's the roads are there to get to it. They're well maintained, but it's not. You know, I could go around the state and name a bunch of them where, depending on where you're at in the park, you can hear the trucks running down the highway or in things like that. Can't do that at Salt Springs. It is far enough off the beaten path that you don't get those noises and the highway noises and the people. Um, because it is not a highly developed park, so there aren't any flush facilities. That takes a segment of our visitors away because they want those particular amenities. And that's okay, because the visitors that want the more underdeveloped or undeveloped amenities are more than happy to go and enjoy it. Um, and then, you know, it's a long ride for me to get up there. It's 45 minutes. So it's a pretty good hike to get there from just about anywhere unless you're up there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember I went up there from Harrisburg pretty much, and that's a haul. I mean, it's not quite Erie, but it's certainly. I mean, you're driving through the sticks at several times while you're getting yourself up there. I'd also say too that Salt Springs, I really enjoyed my visit. It was one of the parks that, so in 2021, I ran a mile at every state park in Pennsylvania, and it was one of the parks I kind of put like an asterisk next to, like, check this one out, spend more time here. Like when you get an opportunity, like go up there. And when I was able to go up there right before a wedding, we had a couple hours to kill, and I found it as a really good home base that if you were to camp there or if you want to spend a weekend there, you can certainly go to a lot of very interesting, fun, nature, outdoorsy places. Do you see people kind of using it in that way?
I don't know. I imagine that is probably pretty accurate. Again, there is a level of standoff between me and the daily operations. So I don't know what people were doing, but you're absolutely right. You know, there's a lot of neat stuff um, just in that area in general. So you could absolutely go and set up for the weekend, you know, enjoy the park, be able to get out, you know, and see some other areas and really enjoy yourself while you're there.
Do you have any tips for people who plan on visiting the park or any suggestions to make their visit as enjoyable as possible?
Uh, Bring what you want. Make sure you're bringing food and beverages, obviously non-alcoholic, but food and water. There's not a whole lot of convenience. There's not a Sheets right down the road. You get back, you get up there and you're hungry. You've got 25 minutes to get to some place where you can get food. Uh, you know, plan for the weather. Know what you're getting into. You know, take your time. Enjoy the trip. You know, half of the enjoyment of any of our facilities is getting there. You know, it's amazing how beautiful this state is, especially when you travel around a ton of it. So, you know, as you drive up north and you're going up 81 through Lackawanna County and Wayne County, and you know, ultimately Susquehanna County, there's just some beautiful, beautiful stuff that is, you know, a privilege to be able to enjoy. So, you know, take your time, enjoy yourself. Don't rush. Give yourself a day. Don't give yourself a weekend. Come up in the Northeast, see us for a couple of days, and take a day and go up and enjoy the park.
Yeah, it is certainly a beautiful portion of the Commonwealth.
Yes.
I'm also going to reckon that you guys don't have great cell or internet service.
Well, there's no internet.
Yeah.
Cell service isn't horrible, depending on where you're at and what carrier you have. But yeah, I wouldn't count on being able to make a phone call, and I definitely wouldn't be counting on being able to download anything.
Yeah. Put your phone away. You're in nature. It's fun.
Yeah. You shouldn't need it anyway.
Yeah. Download your maps before you get there, so when you hit the highway, you know where you're going. Or read a map. That's a fun skill to develop in 2025.
Yep.
Yeah. Lee, thanks so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
I want to thank my guest, Lee Dillon, for joining the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Meta for more information about upcoming episodes. You can support the podcast by buying merch at hemlockstohellbenders.com. Or you can click support this show in the podcast description to provide a monthly donation. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexanderson. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Matt Davis.